Hi, everybody. I am here with Joan Herzing today. She is really excited to be having her at Main Street Yoga Center as a teacher. Joan, you just taught the community class last night, a little gentle flow, and Joan will also be lending her musical expertise skills. You can see the piano there in the background. And she'll be bringing that to our Sound Restore class, which is, I think, a super cool, really unique class that you will be teaching, and also some people are used to Iris Mickey teaching as well, and so you guys will be trading off with that class. And really delighted to have you at the studio, Joan. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed my first class there last night. It's a beautiful space. I'm looking forward to being there every week.
So I'll start with a question I basically start with all the teachers with. So you have this gentle flow class, you have this sound restore class. What can a student expect if they walk into your class? What's going to go on?
Yeah, I teach how I like to be taught too. And I really I kind of call it a choose your own adventure approach to the physicality of practice because I think that people need to honor where their body is in their overall practice and ability level. But I think what's also really important is for people to honor where their body is that day. And sometimes your body needs to be more physical, right? If you've been stationary all day sitting at a desk, maybe you need a bunch of chaturangas and you need to really practice deep and intensely. And other days, maybe you went for a long run earlier that day and your body needs a little more help recuperating, or you've just had maybe a really busy day or a really stressful day. You feel like you were kind of pulled in all directions, and it's really your nervous system that needs a reset and you need to take it a little bit easier. So I'm really careful in my classes to give a lot of different variations of different poses and a lot of different kramas, a lot of different levels of poses to make sure that when you come to this community class that it's for the whole community, right?
Hmm.
You can be whatever level you are in your practice and wherever you are that day to make it as intense or not as intense as what your body needs.
Yeah, I like the term that you use with nervous system reset. Like that to me is very much the common thread between the various styles of yoga, whether it's something more athletic and intense, or something more like a gentle flow, or even in the restorative class where there's sound that's going on. Like, I imagine a lot of people might see something like doing a sound bath oriented class as being really different than that more athletic type of flow. And in some ways it is, but I think when it's quality yoga, which we hope to bring from the studio, it always has this common thread of being a nervous system reset.
Yeah, you feel the same afterwards. I
Hmm.
feel like when you leave a yoga class, if you did what your body called for, you have this great sense of relaxation and presentness afterwards, right? We feel a little more connected to yourself. So, for sure.
Yes. And I, there's a way in which that occurs to me, like that connection to self. It's one of those things I find in yoga. It's like so important. It's become kind of a cliche, and it can be easy to absorb it as a cliche. But at the same time, you know, getting back, doing the act, slowing down to do the act, even if that act is like a really rigorous flow, like slowing down inside uh, to do the act and just continue at it for the 60 minutes or the 75 minutes or whatever that it is that we're committed to doing it is like the engine that drives that nervous system reset.
For sure. I've heard it too, and looking at it from like a mindfulness point of view. I was reading a book called Yoga and the Urban Mystic. It's Darren Main, who's a teacher, I think from Seattle, wrote it, and he had this really lovely kind of metaphor with the mind and the body, where he said like your mind can be everywhere. Your mind can be in the past, it can be in the present, it can be in an imaginary space, wherever. Your body can only be here, and so you use the body as an anchor for the mind. So when you bring your mind to your body, you're bringing your mind into the present tense, and when you're doing a yoga practice, you're keeping your mind there and allowing yourself to really be in the present and not ruminating over something dumb you said at work earlier, or going through your to-do list for after yoga is done. Like keeping yourself there, I think, is also important.
Hmm. Yes. I, I find it's difficult to overestimate the just how effective and how powerful that is of getting embodied and taking the time to get embodied with movement or breath or surrender, whatever the mode of yoga happens to emphasize, as we have different modes of yoga that are going to emphasize different elements. And I think the one thing I would encourage, just because us talking right now is kind of like more of a mental form of expression than it is like a yoga class, so it's really different in a lot of ways what we're doing right now, is something obvious, but I think something that comes up for a lot of folks who have practiced yoga a lot or have practiced a lot in the past, which is thinking embodiment is not the same as embodiment.
Yeah, that's very true. That makes a lot of sense.
And yeah, so I like that we have all of these different avenues to get into the to that space. And um, we've talked a little bit about the two forms that you're going to be working with at the studio. One being gentle flow, and then the other being the uh, like the other form that we talked about was this sound restore, like restorative yoga using sound and so on. And so we have these different avenues in, and maybe we want to talk a little bit about some of the unique things about those avenues or how you came to them, like gentle flow to start out with. Like, what for you stands out or makes gentle flow unique? We kind of talked about commonalities between the different uh, avenues in. Why might someone choose one avenue in or another? Or are there things that people might have misperceptions about with something like gentle flow that would be good to clear up?
Yeah, I think some people think that gentle flow is just if you're not able to do a regular flow, if you're not able to do a regular vinyasa class. And I would really encourage those people to come to a gentle flow and see what it's about. It can be a little easier, but again, easier, easier, just meaning how many muscles you use and how long you hold poses, or how deep into some how physically difficult a peak pose might be. But because I give a lot of different levels, again, you can make it more intense if you want to. And I focus more on meditation, I think, than maybe a regular flow class would. I take a little more time to center at the beginning, go through a short meditation at the beginning, maybe a little longer shavasana at the end, and really coordinating breath to movement. And I like to include a lot of like organic somatic movement too, like in like a really typical one you'd see in classes is the cat cow movements to breath, and then allowing yourself to take it where you want to take it. And I really encourage people to listen to their body, which they might not always do. And you have a little more, I feel like a little more space to do that in a gentle flow, where maybe you're not moving quite as quickly as you would in a regular flow class. I think that that's really important. I think that your best teacher is within, right? If
Hmm.
you can like learn how to listen to what your body needs, it's important.
Yeah, I like um, that you're holding a frame for that. I find that's another one of those, like, it becomes so important it almost becomes a cliche. Where I find there are a number of yoga teachers who will say and repeat constantly over and over again to listen to your body. And I'm not sure all the time that students understand what that means. Not, and it's not the student's fault. It's just that it's kind of repeated without really any framework or instruction of like how to do that. Like that's an actual practice that you do. Just like you might learn how to balance on a foot by making sure that you're like sensing your center of balance and noticing if the center of balance is off the four corners. Because if it is, you are going to fall out. If you start to recognize that, you can train balance. It's not haphazard. It's not just luck and then you stumble into it. It's not that you just keep doing it blindly and suddenly you can do it, but there's an actual process, just like you might work on your tennis swing in a certain way that you can refine and gain that capacity. In the same way, there's a capacity to learn to listen to your body. And I think, I will freely admit, like, one of the things I really honed in on in selecting you and other teachers at this studio is I really wanted teachers who could set frameworks for folks to get into their bodies and listen to their bodies and not just simply make it a cliche.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, that framework comes really natural to someone that has a musical background,
Mm,
especially in improvisational music, right? So you have the framework, you have this is how your hands need to be on a saxophone, this is how your hands need to be on a keyboard, and these are the 8 notes in this scale, and these are the notes in the chord. And then once you kind of have those foundations, then you can write music around it, right? You can play with the melody line, you can play with adding additional notes to the chords for different variations or different inversions of chords. And you can kind of play around with the notes in a scale to do. And in yoga, once you have your foundations and you're safe and you're doing a smart yoga practice, having weight evenly distributed on your feet, having your fingers spread wide, having the arm spirals, that sort of thing, then you can play and you can listen to your breath, and you can move how your body wants to be moved.
mm, yeah.
And I like to, when I center at the beginning of class, I like to give my attendees tools that then they can use later on. So sometimes at the beginning of class, we'll do things like scanning our body for feelings of spaciousness or compression, scanning the body for feelings of heaviness and lightness, right? Sometimes a tight muscle can feel light, or anxiety in your body can feel a little light in your chest. And I have them look at or notice how your right side feels different from the left, and how that's really, it's common, but we're just paying attention. So then they can use that later on in a pose, like if we're playing camel. Does one side feel a little different than the other side? Is one hip flexor a little bit different? What feels compressed, right? If you have feelings of compression in the low back, then can we feel a little lighter in the chest to counterbalance that? And just really to, whatever I can do to get people to pay attention. I think we
Hmm.
don't do that enough.
Yeah, I really like that where, a big part of yoga teaching, I think, to help students go deeper is to provide them with some kind of guidance on how things are feeling in their body. Because if you can sense where the tension is, if you can sense where things are a little less light or a little less expansive, then you have the capacity to energize yourself more. I like to think of like pockets of tension as almost being like these little black holes that like suck your life force out of you. And then
Yeah,
once you open that tension up, you just have your natural life force, which is why I think with yoga, if you do it well, will sometimes leave you feeling energized, sometimes it leaves you feeling calm. It just kind of like lets us all unfold to be more naturally ourselves because the things that kind of suck that away from us get removed. So it's not like we're adding energy, we're just letting those areas that tend to get, suck stuff out of us to stop doing that.
it's
And
really interesting that you said adding energy, because I think what most of us would do without a practice like yoga in our lives is when we have an area of tension, we would just get mad at it. Like, oh, this stupid knee is acting up again, or my stupid lower back is doing this dumb thing again that it, like you're just, you're angry with your body instead of listening to it and seeing what it has to tell you and
Mm,
how you can get into that area and work with it instead of just being angry with it, taking pain medicine.
yes. I don't want to get too into it because it's a long conversation, but I think this gets into the difference between self improvement and self unfolding.
Mm,
So the main difference being like self improvement is I have this kind of rigid idea of where I want to go, and I'm gonna like form fit myself to that. Not that there isn't like a little bit of that that can be helpful, but there's a way in which that's very different than self unfoldment, which is like learning to let go of all the friction between the different parts of myself, not integrating together, getting rid of like the areas that have tension within myself, and just allowing myself to organically flower and grow into who I am. Um, that orientation is a big part of, I mean, there are practical orientations to this too, but it's a big part of why I have a bunch of plants in the yoga studio. Like it's full of plants because to me, like that's part of the vibe and the reminder that self unfolding, the organic growth is different than this sort of like head driven, like I'm going to go to that place of a lot of self improvement. Like the plant just, you give it what it needs and it just flowers into itself.
that's perfect. That's a really, yeah, that's a beautiful analogy with that. I think that even on a less, on a more spiritual or emotional level and not just physical, right? We had a problem with spiritual bypassing, I think, in the yoga community as a whole, where it's just like good vibes only. It's like, oh, that's not how it works. There's actually a lot of vibes, and you realizing that, like surfing the waves, learning how to surf the waves is what you need to be doing, not just like aiming up all the time. Um, yeah, I think a regular yoga practice helps to do that. When you brought up plants, there's this beautiful quote by Ram Dass that talks about trees and how when you go into the forest and you see this tree and the tree is like crooked and only has like branches on one side and like maybe it's like a little weird. You don't think about it with judgment. You're just like, oh, that's what that tree needed to get enough light for itself, and it's just the way it is. And it's easy to cast judgment on people more easily than you cast them on plants. So another
Mm.
great reason to have them all there.
Yeah, that also reminds me of Alan Watts. It's not really a quote. I guess it's more of a what do you call it? Parable, um, where he talks about we'll often go into nature and maybe we see some sea foam come up on the shore, and we see how the trees grow. And there's a way in which all of these things, they're not organized like a grid, like everywhere, like human beings have organized things, like an Excel spreadsheet or like city streets. They're all like these straight line grids, but nothing in nature is like that. Like it's hard to define the way in which nature looks organized. But when you look at the sea foam, you look at the tree, it may not be symmetrical. It might not be those organized in the ways that like we often organize things in life, but it's clear to some part of us that it's not a mess. It's not random, and it is organized, but it's difficult to like define in language and in concept exactly how it is organized. And I always liked that because to me that refers, it helps me get in touch with, and I think it makes it easier to get in touch with, that there's a part of ourself that recognizes organization and harmony that isn't just about like do the numbers add up, are there right angles, um reality, isn't math. Math might reflect reality to a degree, but it's uh, there's something in us that recognizes beyond just like conceptual, measure the angles, all that kind of activity that we tend to get stuck in.
Alan Watts also talked about life as a dance rather than a journey.
Hmm.
And that kind of goes along with it. Like, if your whole thing was just to get to the end, like if you were a dancer, then you would be done when you hit that certain spot on the floor.
Yeah.
Or if you were a musician, you would just be done. You would just only write finales, and the best composers would be the ones that had the biggest note at the end. But really, it's more, you're supposed to enjoy the journey
Mm.
instead of just working on a goal, the ups and the downs, right?
I think that orientation is a good segue into, you know, you have a musical background that you're bringing into the, somewhat anyway, into, I know it's not exactly the same as like a musical performance, but you're bringing some of that musical background into the sound restore class. Um, yeah, I'm just curious, how does that resonate with you? I mean, you can talk a little bit about what students might expect from that class or what your philosophy is, or just like, you know, how did you get to doing this kind of like leading this kind of space? Like,
Yeah. Um, I think that music in general has such a profound effect on people. I know that when I play, it's a total, it's a different nervous system reset for me. So I started playing piano when I was 5 years old. I went to college as a saxophone major, and then I've been playing saxophone since, over 35 years now. Um, and I play in a few bands around town. When the pandemic hit, I found myself with an extraordinary amount of time that I'm not used to having. So I'm used to having a full-time job and then playing in these two bands. And for a long time, the bands were 4 days a week on top of my full-time job. And so then the pandemic came, and I was like, oh, I have a whole weekend here, or sometimes like the whole week. Like, and so my husband and I talked about how can we best use this time to not only balance ourselves, but how can we help balance the greater community when we're out of here, right? So my husband and I play together in one of the bands. Um, so we got into sound healing, is kind of a sound immersion, we'll just call it. And so we bought our first gong, and we had done some hand pan before then. We had done some kirtan before then, so we had a harmonium, and we just kept kind of adding instruments to our our collection and started playing more, and just practicing these instruments on their own was meditative to
mm,
us. And then we start bringing this out into the community, and it's been just really well received. I think it's something that people need right now. Like, vibrations are like their own form of medicine in your body, and music can take you to different places, right? Like, if everyone's been to a concert and you hear the song and you just kind of get lost in it, and that's what I bring to a yoga class with them. So the restorative classes will be there'll be nidra involved, which I love very much. That's my dog in the background, by
yeah.
the way. um, so there'll be nidra involved, there'll be meditation involved, and then just these just delicious restorative poses that then I'll play instruments over top. Also known to bring instruments to Shavasana in my gentle flow classes as well. Um, so yeah, I think it just brings another, I think, layer into classes when there's a little bit of live music and vibration
Mm.
involved.
The doggy um,
Yeah.
seems to agree. Yeah, that's a fascinating combination to me. I mean, obviously, music is profoundly impactful. Uh, there's a reason why a lot of yoga teachers, myself included, have a playlist when we play, right? There's a profound impact that comes from that. Most of us have experienced that live music even is more impactful. Uh, why do we go to live shows of bands that we've listened to on a CD 1,000 times already? So most of us have experienced that. And then there's this like sound immersion aspect, which is sort of like I think of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like simplifying the music, but adding this mindfulness component. And um, that is impactful in a little bit different way. And then we're adding to that tools like restorative yoga and yoga nidra, which is yogic sleep. For those that are unfamiliar with it, it's an awareness exercise more or less, and and so we have this gelling of different forms that uh, I hope to those of you listening doesn't sound too intimidating because they're actually, I think, pretty simple. Like, I think we could take everybody from a housewife in Kansas to a guy in the military in San Diego to your henna tattooed um, gal that comes to yoga class, and like they could all practice this and get something out of it and enjoy it. Um, so yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but to me, I'm not a musician, so it's a little bit outside my wheelhouse. And so to me, like that's a really cool combination that kind of has a little bit of this exotic element for me. Um, that's really neat. I'm glad to have you doing that at the studio.
Yeah, it's an energy exchange, I think, is why we go to the live music. Like it's not just the energy coming out of the speaker, but it's energy coming directly from the person that's creating it. And I think that that's a really powerful tool. And then on top of all of those things, there are certain intervals of music that have been shown in some studies to make your nervous system do a certain thing and to make you
Hmm.
feel a certain way. And there are certain notes that are associated with different chakras. So as we concentrate on different areas, I would do something in the key of F, and that's said um, to target the heart chakra, and same with the perfect fourth. So there's actual like notes I can hit that will be advantageous to your nervous system and your mood and your energy. And that I bring tuning forks a lot to my classes, and I have specific intervals that I do at the end of class to hold by people's heads during shavasana. That can be really really nice and really healing. So yeah, it's a fun additional layer to bring to the experience for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, and there's a way in which maybe like styles of music is very like culturally sort of conditioned. It might take a while to get into a certain style of music that you're not familiar with and so on, but these like basic sounds that you're talking about uh, are, as universal as I can imagine. I'm sure there's some neurodivergence out there where it doesn't work, but it'd be like really rare. Um, And so, like, between that and really just the simplicity of like a yoga nidra, a restorative class, and also what you're talking about in gentle flow, there's a quality of accessibility of all of these. And so, yeah, I really hope everyone comes and tries it out.
Yes, me too. I think that I agree with you. I think that that Sunday night class is going to be really special. I think it's something that you don't find. If you do find it around town, it's a special event, and it's $30 a person, and it's not part of a membership, that sort of thing. I think it's going to be pretty big, and I think it's going to be a really cool experience. And what a beautiful transition for the Monday through Friday 9 to 5ers. What a beautiful transition from your weekend back to the weekdays, right? There's a thing called the Sunday Scaries, That's a thing, right? Where it gets to be the end of the weekend and you're like, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to get back in the grind. I don't want to fight traffic in the morning. I don't want to see my boss or my coworkers in the morning. Like there's I think having that transition will be really nice for everyone, and just to wind down after a long weekend, right? Sometimes you need a vacation from vacation. Like before I started doing yoga, I feel like when I wasn't busy doing one of my jobs, like playing in a band or doing my regular day job, like I was just busy doing leisure things, but I was never not busy. Like, as far as my nervous system was concerned, I was still going. It's like when you plan a vacation and you have something planned every second of the day, like you don't really feel like you got a break, like you don't feel like you got any balance. But a yoga practice in general, and especially something like a gentle yoga or a restorative yoga, is actually like brings balance to your busyness, not just a break, but balance to make you, just able to maybe find those little moments of, I've heard them called moments of grace. And I really love that. Like when you get cut off in traffic, can you find a moment between stimulus and response, right? That's like what the regular practice of yoga, practice of mindfulness can do for you. Like, can I feel like, ooh, I'm feeling angry right now, instead of just going right to the like fist shake, just kind of goes back to that paying attention, back to that coming back to your body, coming back to mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting out of your head a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what a, in a way, like profoundly powerful nutrient it is for every human being to have that capacity to reset the nervous system. And I think it's so important, but I mean, that quality that yoga can provide, I think, is probably something a lot of people don't get much of. It's like you made that comparison of like if you're busy doing one thing, then you're busy doing another thing, and then you're busy doing the next thing. Yeah, you're getting to switch things up, but the nervous system is still not resetting. It's like everybody's had the experience of using a bunch of different apps on their computer or on their phone. And it's like, yeah, you might be switching from one application to another application to another application, and you're using different applications. But eventually, if you don't restart your computer or the phone, it's going to hiccup on you. Um,
Yeah.
and it seems the same in the nervous system. If you don't regularly reset it, it's going to have trouble. And I think there are other things that do that. Things like really getting out in nature, like not just a pile of trees that's in the city, but like really getting out in nature, I think is one thing that can do that for us. Another one would be like having profound love with another human. That's can be a little harder to come by because it depends on finding that someone, but that can be another way that the nervous system resets. And uh, but it's to me, like one of the things that has always inspired me with yoga is one way to reliably experience that and get it without, I would still say like find love, like still get out in nature, but how nice it is that yoga's around to do that because I don't know. I just personally, maybe everybody doesn't feel this way, but just personally, I can't imagine my life being nearly as worth living if I didn't have access to that.
Yeah. I think so. I didn't realize it before I started to practice yoga over 20 years ago now. But yeah, it can really make a big difference in your life if you're not. And people that have come back to classes after just doing them. I mean, online classes are great too. But that have people that have come back into the space, and even people that have come back to yoga. Some people didn't go online during the pandemic. They just quit doing yoga altogether. People that have come back to their practice are like, oh yeah, that's
Mm.
right. this is what this is what I miss. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, I've even found that with, I've also seen that, and I can't tell you how many people I've had come into the yoga studio. They've said, "Hey, would you go easy on me because I haven't practiced in 2.5 years." Like that is really common. But even the people that kept practicing online were like, "Oh my God, like this is so much deeper and different. I forgot what
Yeah.
the power of live community practice is."
And the energy is just so different. To be in a room, not even in the same room as your phone. Your phone is in the other space. You're not in the room with your phone or your computer or yeah, and just to be in a space with other people that are all also resetting their nervous systems, it's a whole it's a whole different experience. And I think that the first I had been in Main Street Yoga before years ago in that building for a little meditation circle, and I remember really liking this space then. But I got to teach in this space last night, and really, I mean, you've done such a great job in there. I think that's I think it's important for a yoga space to portray a sense of balance uh, and I just think it's a very cool space. I'm really like looking forward to being there more often and holding space in that space more often.
Yeah, I'm as well. So good conversation. I really enjoyed today. Is there anything else that you want to impart before we part ways?
I don't think so. Come try out a gentle yoga and a restorative class if you haven't yet. And they're also great ones to bring. The dog is drinking water. They're also great ones to if you're looking to introduce a friend or family member to yoga for the first time. These are both really spectacular classes to bring them to. So
Yeah. And just to make it clear for everyone, this is specifically this Tuesday night, 7:45 p.m. is a community class. So this is one of our classes that is open to everybody. It is an entirely donation-based class. You can use your yoga studio passes and your memberships, and we appreciate that to take the class. But also, like as a yoga studio, we want to be a part of the community, and our goal is to contribute to the community. I think a strong community is made of resilient and nervous system reset individuals. And so, as a community class, it is donation based. So, if you have a hard time or you know someone who's having a hard time affording yoga, it is purely donation based. If you would usually give us a cup of coffee, you can throw $3, $5 in the donation box. Also, if you don't have it, I've been broke before. I know what that's like to not be able to do things because you're broke. And please, please come in, go ahead and come on in. This is our offering to the community. And so, yeah, please come in and check out Joan's community class on Tuesday nights.
great. It was so great to talk to you, Alex. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having me.
you too, Joan. Well, it's wonderful to have you at the yoga studio, and your talents. I think students will benefit greatly from them.
Great. Thank you.
All right.